So Dragonfly Swarm. Kuki Shinobu is an electro character, so of course she got buffed in 3.0 because of Dendro, but Kuki's buffs actually brought her out of a very insignificant spot in Genshin's meta. And now, here we are in 3.1, where she's actually enjoyable in a number of unique teams for her ability to fill multiple roles simultaneously. Therefore, I think she's a 4-star that is absolutely worth considering if you wanted to invest in her, so in today's video, I'm gonna run through her very rough release history, her misconceptions, and then I'm gonna explain what makes Kuki specifically work so well over other units and Dendro teams, such as Hyperbloom and Quicken. So, buckle up, but before you do, follow me on Twitch, because shameless plug always comes before safety. Okay, now buckle up, because I'm gonna discuss everything you need to know in order to enjoy Kuki Shinobu in 3.1. Now, when she first released, players were pretty disappointed with what Kuki brought to the table. Even despite her unique role as an electro healer, she didn't break through any notable teams as an irreplaceable option, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that she's more of a generalist character rather than a specialist character. By that I mean she's good at filling quite a few roles, but she's not great at any of those roles, or well, she wasn't great at any of those roles. And therefore, a lot of the community wrote her off as another mediocre Inazuma 4-star, and that brings me to the big misconception: Kuki was bad before 3.0. But honestly, it's rare to find a character that can consolidate such unique roles into one playstyle, but even rarer for that character to be able to capitalize so well on some of the most valuable support gear in the game. Just as a general example, Kuki can very comfortably use 4-piece tenacity while fully benefiting from the set's HP bonus, but she's also great at using 5-sword since her initial burst cast hits so fast and can cause a critical strike very easily. Gear like this makes a pretty big difference for even the weakest of characters, and it's especially noticeable on Kuki since she can capitalize on so many different builds so effectively. Which is exactly why I want to take a second to compare her with Dori. Dori fills a similar role as Kuki, but yet very few people will vouch for Dori over Kuki because she's much less practical to play and cannot easily capitalize on so many great team-oriented artifact sets and weapons. Not to say she can't use sets like Noblesse Oblige and weapons like 5 Greatsword, but she doesn't capitalize on them as smoothly and requires a lot more micromanagement to work with as opposed to Kuki. And I don't mean to throw Dori under the bus by comparing her to Kuki, it's just a visualizer for those who don't understand why Kuki wasn't bad even before Dendro. That reason being because she's a very simple character to play with access to a lot of useful builds and strategies. Which leads me to, I suppose, another misconception, which is that Kuki was actually good before 3.0. I know, it's contradictory, but as much as I don't think Kuki was bad before 3.0, she definitely wasn't great. And granted, that very much did have to do with the fact that she was designed to lean into the Dendro meta much more than the regular meta, and you know, at the time, we didn't have Dendro. So Kuki was quite restricted in how much of her potential we could use, since the only really notable teams for her at the time were teams that needed an electro unit and wanted to sacrifice damage for survivability, which wasn't a lot of teams at all. So while she did act as a decent generalist support and did so quite well thanks to her easy and flexible building, there wasn't much of a reason to act as a generalist electro healer support. However, Sumeru has obviously changed things. Now that we have Dendro, Kuki is no longer just an electro healer and a generalist support, but she can also very efficiently play as a reaction carry and an enabler for powerful new team styles. And she does this so well because of how simple her kit is to use, as well as the fact that survivability units are few and far between for Dendro teams as of right now. So consolidating that role with her many other roles makes for a potent and versatile character. And so, I think the best way to explain Kuki's massive buffs is to look at her two very strong team archetypes, the first of which being a Hyperbloom team, where she acts as the reaction carry. So, in Hyperbloom teams, Kuki plays a pretty rare and valuable role as the team's healer, whilst also acting as the trigger for Hyperbloom seeds, and she can do this so effectively because both her healing and obviously Hyperbloom damage scales with EM, meaning even if you build Kuki with full elemental mastery, she's still providing sufficient heals to your active character while keeping her maximum Hyperbloom damage around 30 to 35,000 per seed, which is a lot. And yeah, there are other variants of Hyperbloom teams that incorporate healers in different slots, such as Kokomi for the Hydro slot, which would make Kuki's role less valuable, but those versions of Hyperbloom generally require more investment and are more expensive to capitalize on, and they don't even provide that much more payoff. Anyways, every Hyperbloom team needs an Electro unit, a Hydro unit, and a Dendro unit, and Kuki's Hyperbloom teams specifically enjoy characters like Xingqiu, Ayato, Child, or Yelan for their high personal damage and Hydro application, which will allow you to more easily abuse the bloom reaction thanks to Electrocharged. Ayato and Child specifically quite enjoy Kuki's presence because they already have to remain on the field to dish out their damage, so having Kuki's healing ring is very helpful for keeping their HP up while they do so. But even Xingqiu and Yelan perform functionally the same role, and they both provide very high single target damage. You would just need to have a good driver on the team to reposition Kuki's Electro ring and to drive Xingqiu or Yelan's burst. However, our newest Hydro unit, Candace, or Kendake, is also weirdly good at shaking up the team building
strategy even further. Because using Candace's Hydro Infusion, you can opt to use Kuki as your on-field Hydro applicator, but this causes a few inconveniences, those being that Kuki will constantly be healing herself, and therefore she won't benefit from the buffs she gets when she's below 50% HP, but also Kuki's infused normal attacks alone don't apply Hydro very fast, so churning out Hyperblooms could become inconsistent. The solution to this could be to simply swap around your characters so they're all resetting the Hydro ICD on their normal attacks, but a more fun solution is to use your 4th team slot as a flex for another Hydro unit, preferably Xingqiu, which actually creates a pretty tight synergy thanks to Candace. With Candace here, Xingqiu can play as a full on-field Hydro DPS whilst also allowing the entire team to benefit from Hydro Resonance, making it a very respectable and budget-friendly variant of Hyperbloom, even if it's not the strongest overall. Inside of Hyperbloom teams, since your Shinobu is triggering all the most important reactions, you're gonna want her to stack a lot of Elemental Mastery, meaning 4-piece Gilded Dreams will be her strongest set overall for the 230 Elemental Mastery it grants when she's the only Electro unit in the party. You can instead run a 4-piece Deepwood on her since Hyperbloom damage does benefit from Dendro's Shred, but this will objectively always provide a lower damage output than 4-piece Gilded Dreams since you can literally just put 4-piece Deepwood on your Dendro unit. And as for weapon choice, there are a number of decent options depending on how you want your Kuki to influence the team. If you simply want her to carry with as much Hyperbloom damage as possible, Iron Sting and Freedom Sworn are your best options, as they provide a huge EM bonus as well as generally strong passives that do affect your Hyperbloom damage. But for a more supportive focused weapon, even despite her role as a reaction carry, you can instead opt to use weapons like Five Sword for its amazing team battery potential, and like I brushed over earlier, Kuki is pretty good at proccing the weapon passive since her burst can hit so many enemies so fast, significantly helping your chances of causing a crit. You should still grab some crit rate though. I would also like to point out that there is a new gacha weapons series coming out with 3.1, the first weapon in the series being the Claymore. But if the sword in this series, Zephos Moonlight, acts anything like the Claymore, it will very much contend as Kuki's best 4-star weapon for Hyperbloom teams and just in general, because it consolidates her EM scaling and her supportive potential into one very swag looking sword. Now, moving onwards to Kuki's other powerful team archetype, she also acts very strong as a support for Quicken teams, whether they're focused on the spread reaction or aggravate, it doesn't matter. Quicken teams generally allow multiple Electro and or Dendro characters to carry a high damage output thanks to spamming spread and aggravate reactions, and although Kuki's own ability to spam aggravate reactions is kinda mediocre, she makes up for her lack of aggravate damage with, once again, role consolidation, and this is especially apparent in spread teams. Just for a little bit of perspective, Kuki can proc roughly 3 to 4 aggravates per burst depending on your HP upon casting it, and then her elemental skill can cause a total of roughly 4 aggravates at C0 and around 5 at C2, so in general, not a lot of aggravate per rotation, but thanks to her status as an Electro character, she is still helping to maintain Quicken uptime, and she's also acting as a healer for your on-field character, as well as a pretty significant buffer with certain gear. The interesting thing about her role as a healer in Quicken teams is that since there are so few healers that are even compatible with Quicken teams, Kuki fills a rare role, but not only does she fill it, she fills it well. With aggravate focused teams, Kuki can act as a support for any number of other Electro units such as Sino, Kuching, Beidou, Fischl, Yaimiko, etc., and the last 2 team slots can be filled by obviously a Dendro unit and then a flex spot, which could be another Electro or Dendro unit or an Anemo or Geo unit. But with spread focused teams, currently the only Dendro DPS we have right now is Tignati, but in general, Kuki is especially valuable for Dendro DPS units that enjoy Quicken teams, and she's a great buffer and support to bring for these kinds of characters, so hopefully we see more Dendro DPS units in the future. But with any variant of Quicken teams, Kuki can enjoy a lot of different builds depending on what roles you want her to lean more into. For example, 4-piece Tenacity is an amazing set to help boost your team's personal damage, and it even greatly benefits Kuki herself. But keep in mind, bonus attack does not scale your team's aggravate or spread damage, only their personal damage, so this set is best used on teams that have multiple characters with high personal DPS, like Kuching, Fischl, Yai, I suppose Tignati, Sino, etc. Still a great set though. If that doesn't tickle your fancy though, Kuki can also use other buffer sets like 4-piece Instructors to significantly boost the team's elemental mastery, which will be most beneficial with characters that can proc aggravate or spread a lot. The more they proc reactions, the more valuable the set becomes for Kuki, and also characters like Tignati who just have scaling with elemental mastery. And it's worth mentioning that if you're running Kuki on a team to support a Dendro DPS unit, she can hold 4-piece Deepwood and comfortably maintain the 4-piece passive for your Dendro DPS, which becomes especially valuable if other units in your party would prefer holding different artifact sets. And by the way, just to clear this up, I don't think 4-piece Gilded Dreams is going to provide much value for Kuki in these teams, since her main focus isn't on her own reaction damage, but rather the wide variety of utility she's able to provide to teams. So while it will boost her own aggravate damage, it won't do much at all for the team's total damage output. And finally, with weapon recommendations in her Quicken teams, currently your best options are still going to be Favonius Favonius Sword for team battery potential, Iron Sting for more reaction damage, or Freedom Sworn for more reaction damage and team buffing. But my point still stands that Zephos' Moonlight could become a great sword for Kuki, it just depends on if it's similar to the Claymore or not. And yes, you can build Kuki for personal damage, but it's wildly less efficient than the build strategies I've gone over in this video. And in general, I think it's fair to say that although she's definitely not the be-all end-all Electro character with this new Dendro meta, Kuki has definitely taken over her own corner of the meta for her ease of use and comfortable gameplay when using her. And in that regard, she kinda reminds me of Kokomi, since Kokomi also suffered a lack of popularity before players realized her potential as a consolidated enabler, buffer, and healer. So has she been massively buffed by Dendro? Absolutely, no question. And I'm even gonna go as far as to say that she'll probably get even stronger as more characters come out that can capitalize on her value in Hyperbloom and Quicken teams. But anyways, if you like this video, don't forget to like and consider subscribing, because it really helps my channel out. And I will see you in the next video, friendos.